Welcome back to the channel, lads and ladies, and welcome back to the Type 74G Kai, I think? Something like that. It's the golden Type 74, and you can see we've spruced it up a little. Well, maybe you can't, but we got a custom camo on here that looks just very nice, and we got our teddy bear and a few other things, and welcome to Map Design Thunder. Gaijin just didn't want people flanking on this side of the map, so they put those just barely impassable rocks here, and it's kind of a pain. I get the idea, but it's just kind of, it's implemented in a way that's not satisfying to me. So I'm not going to speak for other players. I think that it's kind of a bad habit, so I'm going to try and break myself of that. And also, peeking out is sort of a bad habit. When you don't have anything to aim at in top tier, you tend to get slapped for that. But as you all are probably aware, Gaijin greased up the tracks of all of our tanks to keep us from mountain goating and getting into cheeky spots, and I see why that matters sometimes. There are certain spots that are known to a number of people, and more that probably have yet to become famous, that are kind of extremely powerful and difficult to deal with. And again, map design in War Thunder feels like it's not the best, especially in locations like this, but I'm starting to get a little bit of sympathy for the predicament that the game designers are in, because you need these maps that are realistic enough that you can be engaged and enjoy what the game engine really has to offer, which is just War Thunder actually on the Daegor engine is a very beautiful game that is very, very well optimized. I remember back in the day when I was on a potato PC, a laptop with an integrated graphics card, this was the best looking, smoothest running game that I could play, and I was very impressed, and that has been maintained up to this day. There really is a level of quality and dedication and time put in to make all this come together, that when you encounter stuff like this, like what is a solution for one issue causing problems in another area where they were less of a problem before, this dead end is really difficult to get out of, and you have almost no contribution you can make to the battle from this spot, at least in the Type 74. And I'm new enough to this spot and this particular predicament. You can see we're just sliding around all over the place as we try to awkwardly position, and the terrain catches us here. We're clipping through this rock a little bit, which is going to suck us into the neutral zone, and then we've got to traverse our way out of it. And neutral steering is still weird in War Thunder. Tanks don't really spin in a tight circle, even if they have that reciprocating steering, and it's just another one of those things. You tend to slide in one direction or forward or back or whatever, and one day I suppose it'll all get fixed, but that day is not today. And you get into situations like this, and it can be frustrating, and that's one of the reasons that even as I'm talking about it, I'm salting in these comments about just how much work and effort and dedication and love has been put into this game, because when you realize what a loved game this is, then, well, it's harder to say bad things about it. And I guess at this point, have I told the story about the ugliest baby I've ever seen? I think now's the time. So back when I was working at a call center. We were customer service for Nextel, which recently at the time got bought out by Sprint, so it was Sprint Nextel cell phones, and it was pretty miserable. The company I worked for was a contractor that sold us to their client and encouraged us to work lots and lots of overtime that they didn't always pay us for. And I actually won a class action lawsuit on that, so I had a sweet like 200 and some bucks come in the mail one time. Anyway, that didn't even come close to covering my unpaid overtime, by the way. But one day when I was working at this soul-crushing job, and I was a younger, dumber, a lot less considerate man back in the day. This is one of the things that plays back in my head as a memory, and I go, you idiot. And it reminds me to be considerate and to not do certain things. So, I was looking at the empty cubicle next to me, and I see a picture of the ugliest baby I've ever seen. It was rough, okay? And I turned to the guy sitting next to me, and I'm trying to make conversation because it's a rare, quiet moment. And ironically, we got sound from the game now. And this is E. Who is this? qwertyes69, a frequenter of the channel and a friend of the channel. Gonna show us some big explosive action in the one true king of T34, the American one. But I turned after observing a picture of the ugliest baby I've ever seen in this empty cubicle next to me. I turn to the guy next to me and I say, "Is that not the ugliest baby you've ever seen?" And, you know, I should have known better, because the guy sitting next to me, he had a pretty rough looking face too. You know, it kind of looked like he, I think the phrase is that he got beat with an ugly stick. Not to, you know, like, don't judge people based on their appearance, and really just like try not to notice that kind of stuff, especially if it's just looks that somebody was born with. But let's be honest, there's looks that look good. There's looks that comparatively are not quite so euphorious, and the look he gave me is one that I won't forget, because it's the look of someone that is now deciding that you don't exist anymore. And he said, "That's my daughter, you son of a bitch." That was his wife's cubicle, and the ugliest baby I ever saw was his daughter. And here's the kicker, right? I told you I was a dumbass. This is one of those memories that replays back in my head over and over again to remind me that I'm a fucking dumbass and I need to be careful about what I say and how I see things. And my immediate response in a panic was to say, "Oh, well, she'll probably get better." Okay, alright, I'm done. I don't know what the lesson is there, but I think it's good to try and treat every idea as a gem with many facets, and it's best to turn that gem around and examine it from every angle before commenting on it. Or if you do, maybe among friends and other people that don't take themselves too seriously. I'm never gonna forget that look. The guy was being gracious. That was one of the most angry, that was the most anger-inducing things I've ever said in my life, and it was very kind of him to not just beat the ever-loving piss out of me. And he would have been completely right to do so. I wouldn't even have, you know, he'd probably chase me around the cubicle farm a little bit, and I get some much-needed exercise. But yeah, okay, story done. Let's watch some tank carnage. and then I'll probably share just one more little brief story that's pertinent to a jet match that I'll show you. So that'll be the last 3 minutes of the show, because that's how long jet matches tend to last. But you know what, it's a lot more enjoyable experience than I remember it being in the past, and that's something that I've noticed about War Thunder in general. There's so much to learn with this game, and there's such a diversity of experiences available, and it doesn't feel good to get your butt kicked, and that can make you treat vehicles that are not the meta vehicles, that are not the most effective, with a certain amount of distaste or disdain, or discomfort, or whatever. But the first time is the worst, the second time is better, and eventually you might find something that's really new to you, and that's pretty exciting. So, don't tell this T-34 that it's ugly. Its mama thinks it's beautiful, and you know what? After playing it for a while, it's not hard to see why. Love is not blind. Love just sees the world as beautiful, because it's such a joy to look upon your favorite people, places, and things. And the American Event Premium Heavy Tank, rank 4, I think, T-34 Heavy Tank, is something of an odd and awkward monster. It almost feels like a 6.7 KV2. And recently, I shouldn't say recently, but it feels like it was just yesterday that certain formulae were used to determine shell penetration factors in War Thunder instead of the individually curated, historically relevant, source-based figures that Gaijin had been using. And the reason is obvious and twofold. One, it standardizes things so that you don't have to translate from Ching Chong to Bing Bong, but also it allows you to bring in and balance, have a reference point at least for vehicles that have completely unknown capabilities, or I should say rounds and cannons or whatever, weapon systems, because it can say, look, we put this and that into the formula, so this is what it's going to be. All of that is to say, the T-34 got a bit of a buff on its AP round in terms of penetration, and the post-penetration damage of both the AP and the HE, I think it's 155, or is it just 150, 152? Anyway, it's like a heavy cannon, if you will. I know. Welcome to sophisticated thunder. But it is one of the biggest cannons to ever be mounted on a tank, and even though it falls far behind the FV4005, it still is a massive cannon, and the AP round has a little bit easier of a time dealing with the heavy armor that is fairly common at 6.7, 7.7 matches, although it's still going to struggle somewhat against the Tiger II-H, which is one of the most effectively armored tanks at 6.7. Don't at me. It really does have extremely small weak spots to most conventional rounds, and that's really the best that you can ask for in terms of armor protection in this game. In addition, the high explosive round is very, very punchy, as we've already seen, and qwertyes is just having an absolute, pardon the pun, blast here. And it couldn't get any better when you see an Ostwind, because that Well, that's what happens. It always feels nice to slap a German SPAA and say, no, bad Hans, you go back to the vehicle select screen and you think about what you've done. But yeah, these are the fun matches. This is sort of one of those experiences where you go, yes, I know the T29 is better. Yes, this isn't the T34. This is the T32? The T34 is the 120mm cannon, right? So I've been lying to you this whole time. This is the event vehicle. The real meta vehicle now at 6.7 is the T34 with its massive penetration, big, heavy, solid shot round, and a significantly faster reload over this heavy fellow. That's right, none of the crew have been knocked out, and yet it still takes absolutely ages to reload the cannon. But again, it feels like a slightly higher tier KV2, and it has improvements in gun handling and mobility to match the higher BR. Add to that the fact that you do have at least 2 50 cals. I know, not as much as you can find in other offerings, but still definitely some American muscle. And on top of that, not quite so reliable as the Tiger II, but an easy second place in terms of armor protection at 6.7. And then you've got the backup of the fantastic American teams. I mean, you're just looking at a fantastic lineup. American and German 6.7, 7.0 lineups are just absolutely delightful. If you have complaints, then there's something you're missing out on, because it really doesn't matter what your playstyle is between their light tanks and then mediums and heavies and aircraft support. Just absolutely fantastic. Lots of fun to be had. And yet this tank's not quite the meta. Its reload is just a bit too long. Its AP is just a bit less penetration than what you would prefer, and its HE is, well, HE. It's either completely godlike or almost useless, and it seems like it's random which it's gonna be. I mean, everything kind of seems up in the air right now with the way that cannon rounds can perform sometimes, but that also seems like it might be linked to server stability issues. It's probably a tangled mess, which explains why it hasn't been really comprehensively dealt with yet. But I'm sure that just as War Thunder development is dedicated to beautiful graphics and optimization and fixing and breaking maps, that they're also gonna fix and break the penetration mechanics to make things work and then not work and then work again. We're just along for the ride and loving every moment of it if we accept it for what it is. Don't say it's an ugly baby. Just smile and ask that guy next to him how his day has been. I don't know, talk about literally anything else. A little bit of positivity. But here we are in the Sushi, the Sushi Saber, one of several available to Japan, and you may recognize this beauty for what it is. This is one of those jets that, if you looked at it as someone that's not really familiar with the Sabers in War Thunder from the old days, and by the way, look at that face when the anime hero is about to go full psycho mode. But this jet can confuse people that don't have experience with the gameplay of jets at this tier. In early jets, it's really about speed. The advantage you have over everything that's not a jet is your max speed and your acceleration at high speeds are completely unrivaled by everything that has a prop. Except for you, A2D. Sit down, be quiet, you're actually a jet anyway. But we're gonna have some nice quick action here in the Sushi Saber, and I'll finish my little talk about how this is a confusing jet for the uninitiated. Among them, myself. I've talked in a recent video about how I didn't have much experience with the Sabers and I was intimidated by them, and then I just took the plunge, decided to be fearless and die gloriously and have a good time doing it, and you know what, that leads to some good results. 3 quick kills, and that's all we're gonna get in this match, because I'm gonna have to deal with 2 poops, one in the little girl potty and the other one in the diaper of my son. So for the rest of this match I was actually sitting on the airfield, AFK, as you do. Duty calls, after all. But the Saber can be a confusing or a confounding or a consternationifying. It's getting late, you can tell my brain's falling asleep already. But it can be a confrontational jet when you look at the stats, because you see it doesn't have an afterburner, it doesn't have the insane climb rate and top speed that a lot of jets at or slightly above its tier have. It either has no missiles or has access to only 2. I know, only 2 AIM-9Bs. So sad, but you can see they can get kills. You just gotta have the right setup and low enough ping, because ping does kill the tracking on these missiles right now. But you look at the Sabers and you think, these jets aren't competitive. You know what? For some of them, you might be right, especially the early ones in the American tree. But you get into the late, the most modern Sabers, they end up being a really lightweight, powerful aircraft. They can maneuver incredibly well. Their roll rate is fantastic. It's sort of like a Focke-Wulf if they can actually pull as well. And we're a jet. And this aircraft is just delightful. Really enjoy that camo. I love the look of, by the way, the aesthetics on these planes are just absolutely gorgeous as well. But it turns out that there are 2 resources that are even in higher demand in jets than speed and altitude, and those are attention span and recovery time, because good acceleration and the ability to pull off efficient maneuvers can make a huge difference, as well as just being able to be out of someone's immediate attention while they deal with one thing, and then being able to respond to a situation very quickly and take advantage of it, as you saw us doing there. Most of my kills in jets at this tier have been on people who were focusing on someone else, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. And all of that is to say that between, I'd say, probably 8-7 and 9-7 jets, you can do well with a lot of things, especially if they can defensive fly reasonably well, just by keeping yourself from getting killed and looking for opportunities. So it comes down to situational awareness. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, there's a link to the Discord for you to join my little social network, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye.